Do you remember the time we went to a meeting of the Writers' Circle in Brussels?
I do, and unlike you, I remember it correctly.
What do you mean, unlike me? I remember it perfectly. Why would you say that?
Maybe because you remember it as you giving constructive criticism to people, and I remember it as you being rude to strangers.
No. Okay. Well, so what we have there is one situation, two memories. How does that work?
Memory. It's way more complicated than we think it is.
This isn't a podcast with all the answers.
It's a conversation about figuring things out as you go.
From two very different generations.
With Michelle R. Williams
and Nick Hirst.
Welcome to Life Happens.
Okay, so before we get started on talking about memory, what's this you're telling me about an arranged marriage? Yeah, I'm calling you out on that.
Yeah, apparently I'm getting married. No, oh my gosh, please, I'm joking. It was a very bad joke of my darling mother. Oh my goodness, don't even get me started. Growing up surrounded by my father's friends and by different circles of them, it's just, I mean, on one hand, it was great. On the other, a lot of them have children and sons my age. And I think that my mom still didn't fully accept the fact that I will probably marry a foreigner one day. So she's still trying her luck. And oh gosh, we were on another exhibition last week and we got a bit drunk and it ended up me having an arranged marriage now with one of the sons of my father's friends. Perfect. Great. I mean, I'm so far away from marriage as I can be, but yeah, let's go. I mean, cool.
Okay, so you're not actually married.
No, geez, and I really hope I won't be for a while. I mean, do I look like someone who is ready to be married? I don't fucking think so.
I'm not sure what...
Especially, I mean, I'm sorry, but I probably won't end up with a Czech man, and I just really don't want to. And I mean, this guy, I mean, you know, I don't want to be rude. This guy that she was talking about, he's really nice. I know him, and like, you know, nothing against him. But at the same time, I'm like, Mom, I love you, but you chose my father, so I'm not sure you are the right type of person to choose my future husband, to be fair. You know, let me do that on my own. Thank you.
Well, I think the whole topic of arranged marriage is probably a whole different episode and not something we're going to talk about today.
No.
But what are we getting into today? Not. Because I've completely forgotten. See what I did there?
That was actually really good. And to be fair, I'm so not surprised. Yes, that's exactly what we are talking about. You forgetting stuff and then making them up as you go so the narrative fits you.
I don't think I do that, do I? Or maybe we all do it.
Maybe we all do it because we all trust our memory like 100%. And we shouldn't, because it's so false, fake, and unreliable that we actually really shouldn't be trusting our own memory.
Why? Explain to me the science behind we can't trust our own, because if we can't trust our own memory, who are we?
Memory is not a perfect playback of what happened, which is usually how we see it, but it's more like a reconstructive process that, you know, like when we remember something, we are just putting together pieces of the past and we are making these memories from how we felt or how we are feeling now or how we changed or literally what fits us better. So at the end of the day, the story will never end up in the way that it actually happened.
But why? Why can't we just remember things as they were? Or maybe do we perhaps change the memories to perhaps make ourselves look better?
We do. And I'm glad you are aware of that because that's exactly what you do. Now, there are many reasons of why you would change a story. And it's not because you would want to. It's your brain doing it. And mostly it's unconscious for you and you don't even know about it. But, you know, it changes with time, it changes with experience, it changes with the person you are, it changes with your identity. changes also because sometimes we just don't want to remember certain things, and there's this whole thing about memory and trauma, that people growing up having traumatic childhoods, they don't remember their childhoods at all. I mean, I was before this episode, I was thinking like, yeah, well, like what's my earliest memory, and like what are some memories of like my childhood, and so on and so on. And I realized that I don't think that any memory I have from my childhood is actually correct. Because first of all, I don't remember a certain part of my childhood for many different reasons. And another thing is that, we all have childhood memories, but how much of them are actually our memories and how much of them are just storytelling of other people? Because you can't remember everything, first of all. And as a kid, you just can't remember certain things. It goes with, how your brain evolves. So why are you remembering these stories? I mean, isn't it because someone else told you? And I seriously started doubting every single childhood memory I have left, because I'm sure that every single story that I remember as a memory was told to me by someone in my family, or I saw, videos, pictures, and so on and so on. So I don't think I have any childhood memory that would be purely mine. And people just put it in my brain as my memory, but at the same time, it's their storytelling. Or maybe I'm weird, I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I honestly, I think, because I remember a lot of my childhood, and let's face it, I need to go back much further than you do to try and remember my childhood. At least 3 or 4 years. I remember lots of it. And of course, the other thing about memory is that there are certain things that can set off memory. A smell, for example, can set off a memory. Music, we'll talk about that later, that music can transport you back and set off memories. But other things, other sensory things as well, taste, touch, little things like that. All of these things can set off memory. What is your earliest memory that you believe to be true, to be yours, not something that's...
To be mine?
Yeah, not something that you feel that has been told you.
I have absolutely no idea. I was trying to go further than to kindergarten, because I do have quite a lot of memories from kindergarten. I mean, some are really traumatic ones, because funnily enough, I did kindergarten twice, and not because I failed, but because when I started kindergarten, I was just so unhappy that it was just traumatic for me when I was like 3 years old, and for my mother as well. So I stopped going to kindergarten for like, I don't know, half a year or a year, I don't know, one term. And then I joined again. Since joining again, I have quite a lot of memories. Getting back to me getting married. Oh my gosh, we are literally circling so many things today. I got married in kindergarten.
Really?
I had a husband, and that is a memory I remember. And I don't know how it happened, honestly, but I remember, and Caroline was there, because Caroline, obviously, she's my best friend literally since the day I was born. So we attended kindergarten together. So she was there. She was my maid of honor, actually. And I just remember me and this one guy just getting married. I don't know why. If we were playing family, or I have no idea. But we got married. We got the whole wedding. Everyone was so into it. And then the next day, he actually got me a ring, and I had a ring from him.
I was worried what you were going to say there for a moment. And then the next day he got me. I was like, got you what? So let's just
a dog. Okay.
Yeah. Let's just
so that might be one of my
how old
memories.
How old would you have been at this time?
It was the year before I started school. So it was 2009. So I was like 5, 6, something like that. Which, to be fair, for like the earliest memory, is quite late. Like I feel I should have memories, earlier in my life. And again, as you were asking, like, what is your memory that you think it's yours only? I'm not sure this one is purely mine either, because Caroline was there. And since then, we talked about it and joked about it quite a lot. But also recently, because like 2 years ago, I think it's already 2 years, I met that guy randomly after not seeing him for 15 years. I met him on like this event, and I went to him. I was like, "Hey, do you know who I am? I'm actually your wife." And he remembered it. He remembered the wedding, and we were just talking about it. It was so funny. And so, it was something that I quite recently was talking about with Caroline, with this guy, and then eventually with my mom, because she knew his mom. So it was so awkward. Like, imagine having these two 5-year-olds who are like, "Oh yeah, we are married," and you're like, "Darling, I think you are quite young to be married." And now 15 years later, my mom is like, "Don't you want to get married?" And I'm like, "No, I'm too young to get married." Ironic.
Yeah, well,
but so, I'm not sure if the memory is mine either.
yeah. Well, because of the shared experience with Caroline in particular, then you can never be sure. But we should just clear up that 5 is very young to be married. So don't try this at home, kids. Even I think 21 is young to be married, because
Thank you. Can you say that
so
to my
much-
mom?
Yeah, I will. All right. Mrs.
Thank you.
Williams, it's too young for Michelle to get married. Do you want to know my earliest memory? Because I do have an earliest memory, and
Were you younger than me?
Yeah.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I feel terrible because, as you said, you have like longer to remember it. You have to go much further away from you now. So
And this is another point first is, what form do your memories take? Is it like watching a video? Is there audio? Can you smell the room or wherever you are? Can you taste it, touch it? How, because my earliest memories are basically just a few pictures that are seared into my brain. And what I've heard, just colloquially, is that, your very earliest memories, the memories that sustain through your life and don't get erased, are because of something, some event that is actually very important or possibly traumatic or something that will fix it in your head. So obviously you're getting married at age of 5, clearly very traumatic.
Do you think it shaped me as a person, and now I won't be married until I'm at least 40 because I'm traumatized by it? Oh gosh, that explains so much. Yeah. Damn it.
But
let's go back to you. Okay, let's just skip that. Let's go back to you.
So my earliest memory was I was the oldest in my family, the firstborn, I should say. And I remember being taken when my brother was born to go and see him, which means I was 1 year and 11 months old. And I can remember,
Really?
I remember my aunt, my father's younger sister, saying, "We're going to go and visit your mother now and your new brother." And that's one bit. And I can remember the bit of the house. I lived in this big old house in England, as we mentioned before. I can remember where I was in the house when she said that. Then I remember nothing. And then I remember walking into this room, which is the hospital room. And I can remember there was my mother's bed. As I walked into the room, my mother's bed was on the left. And then right round on the other side of the bed, there was a cot. And that was where my brother was. And that's all I can remember. Some just very, very hazy pictures, quite possibly in black and white.
That's crazy. That's actually crazy.
So it was probably because, it was a big deal that I was having a brother delivered.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I remember when my sister was born, but we are 6 years apart. So as a 6-year-old, you remember stuff. So that's not such a big deal. But this is actually quite impressive that you are like 2 years old and you remember that. That's so cool. I really wonder, like, what's wrong with me now? If I'm like, maybe I didn't have any memorable things happening to me in first, like, at least 5 years of my life, which is quite sad. Or I had traumatic things happening to me, which I don't remember. Or there's just something wrong with my memory, because I genuinely can't think of a thing sooner than my second time in kindergarten. And I really did think about it. Like, since we came up with this topic, I got really into it because memory in general just fascinates me. And I was like, it's normal to not remember things from when you are a toddler. And now you remember it? What do you mean? And like, from me, it's only like, I don't know, not even 20 years ago. So that's not that much to remember. And you remember it and I don't. That's crazy.
Well, it's because it was always there and I just always kind of held on to it. And it's not something that anyone in my family has ever talked to me about. So it's not like a shared memory, even though there were you know, other people involved. Although, apart from my brother, everybody else in that memory is no longer with us. But
But
yeah.
I bet that your brother doesn't remember. Because if he
Well,
does, we'll
it was
really need to
about
study
3
your
days
DNA.
old.
Yeah, if he does remember that, we need to study your DNA because there is something going on.
But another thing about memory, we have a marvelous idiom. There you go.
Oh gosh, of course. Mm-hmm.
It's taken this long, but I finally get my idiom in. We have this idiom in English that you can apply it to a lot of situations, but let's apply it to thinking about the past and our memories. You can look at the past through rose-tinted glasses. And I know you have a sort of similar expression in Czech.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's quite common, that we kind of tidy up our memory. We clean it up. We turn it into something that we actually wanted it to be. Or would have liked it to be at the time when maybe it wasn't as perfect. So that then when we recall that event, we can recall it with a smile on our face rather than a frown. Is that right?
Yeah. It's actually scientifically proven that people tend to recall good memories easier than the bad ones, with the exception of traumatic memories, because, or traumatic. I mean, sometimes, with all of that, it's so complicated because sometimes you just don't remember the traumatic event because your brain is trying to protect you from that. What I mean is that if you have a good day and a bad day, it's easier for you to remember the good day. But obviously, when you have some situation that's so emotionally charged, like someone passing away or something like that, obviously you will remember that, and it's a bad memory. So, you can't count these in it. But like in general, if you have basic memories, you tend to remember the good ones. But what I find so interesting, because when I first started studying memory and I read that, I was like, that's stupid. I mean, I probably don't remember just like more of the good memories. I mean, I remember the bad ones as well, even if they are like, everyday and boring. And that was just my thought, but I was like, who am I to judge? And then I read the next line, and it was, well, in case people suffer with depression and similar diseases, it's more common for them to remember the bad memories. And I was like, oh, that explains a lot. I mean, the remembering good memories more goes with just mentally healthy people. And then depending on, if we are talking about depression, for example, it can go with more illnesses. But if we are talking depression, the more depressed you are and the more you suffer with that, the more likely you are to remember the bad ones. Which for me, I'm always saying that it's like 50-50. Like if I actually think about it and you give me like any situation, like, I don't know, remember this holiday or remember this time of your life or this school year and so on, I'm usually able to recall like 50% of good memories and 50% of bad ones, which I thought was completely normal, and apparently not really. So, I mean, you are probably the most mentally healthy person I know. So you tell me. Yeah, no, maybe not. But you don't suffer with like depression issues
really.
and stuff.
No.
So you tell me.
Well, I think I remember the good stuff much more than the bad stuff. I think it's true that there's something in our brains that is able to erase bad memories or certainly suppress them. I think, and also there's, I don't know, maybe I think there's an element of freedom of choice how we use our brains. I choose to remember the good stuff. I don't choose to remember the bad stuff. I generally think that my memory is pretty good and accurate.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to, actually be able to travel back in time and just check, is that exactly what happened? Is my memory correct? Or have I altered it in some way? But
I think you did. Because to be fair, even what you were just saying, like you are an optimist. I think we already established that. And sort of coming back to like some couple of episodes ago, I don't remember which episode it was, when we were talking about coping mechanisms. I think that that's exactly what's going on here, that you just don't really want to cope with the bad memories, so you focus on the good ones and you're like, okay, let's just choose not to think about the bad ones, which is fine. I mean, good for you. I wish I could focus on good memories more. Seriously. Because memories are triggered. That's why it's so hard when someone asks you, like great example with us trying to remember some childhood memories. When someone just asks you, what is your earliest childhood memory? You don't know, because there's no emotion, there's nothing to trigger it. But then, as you were saying at the beginning, you smell something, hear some song, or you are at some place in some situation, you feel certain emotion and it's triggered, and suddenly it's easy for you to remember. That's how it works.
Let's look at the more sinister side, though. How your
Oh,
memories can be hijacked. You called it we talked about memory jacking. Do you want to explain
is it a weird
that?
thing to call it? Because I feel like you're
really
just making fun of me right now.
Did you make that expression up, or is it a thing?
I don't know. I was just writing my notes down and it just came to my head. I don't know if it's an expression. Is it an English thing, or is it just me ruining English language again? Because it feels fine to me.
Feels fine to me. I haven't heard it before, although I might have done. Can't remember. But
of course you can't. I really want to make, speaking of that, I really want to make an edit from this episode when you say, like, I remember everything, my memory is great. And then you will have a compilation of all of the moments when you say you don't remember.
I don't remember saying I don't remember.
Of course, that's your perfect excuse. And
tell me about memory jacking. I do like that expression. Let's stick with it.
Well, it all connects to false memory, which is basically what we already started talking about. When you are not sure if your memories are right or not, but it can be changed by someone else. So imagine this situation. I'm sure that we all had that happening to us when you are talking about some story with a group of people. And you know that a certain friend was there with you, and that said friend tells you that's not how it happened. And you usually get, into this back and forth argument when you claim it did happen this way and he claims it didn't. And I mean, you are always sure you are right, because you're like, no, I remember it like it happened yesterday. Like, come on, it's your memory that's failing you. Like, I remember. But do you actually? Because there are so many ways to change that memory. I love to give this example of, which I seriously, when I was thinking about it, when I was writing it, I just thought that it fits you so well. And I didn't mean it as an insult. I just mean it in the way that you are retelling your stories quite often. And so I'm sure that this happened to you. So imagine a situation. You are saying a story. And in the story, it was you and 3 other people. You just know that because the story happened quite recently. You just know it was 3 people. And once you are saying it, you accidentally say that it was 5 people. Happens. You just say it. You don't really care, or you don't even notice that you said that. And you move on. The next time, when you say the story, your brain slightly remembers that maybe it was 5 people, because last time you said it was 5 people. So you say it again. It was me and other 5 people. Years go by, you keep telling this story over and over and over again, and your brain just remembers 5 people. And one day someone asks you who were they? Like, what people? And you can very clearly, very easily picture 3 people. They were your friends, you can name them. But for some reason, you can't recall who the other 2 were. And so you blame your memory. You are like, oh, I just forgot who they were. But it was, probably this friend of mine, or this friend's wife, or this classmate of ours, and so on and so on. And your mind, because you think that there were 5 people. It's a fact, you just know that. But because you can't remember who the other 2 were, your mind might just put someone else there. fill the gap. And suddenly you know all the names of the 5 people, but there were never 5 people. It was always 3 people. And then, coming back to the first situation, you are telling the story again. And one of the friends who was there is like, no, it was just you and the 3 of us. Like, what are you talking about? But you insist it was 5 people. Who is right at that point? And how can you tell?
We tend to be, you said this earlier, we tend to be very convinced by our own memories.
Yeah.
And generally, most people, I think, and I'm being horribly generalizing here, but most people will think my memory is correct. My version of events is correct. It's quite interesting. You have certain movies where they tell the same event from different viewpoints, and it comes out slightly different, which is really, that's kind of interesting. And really, yeah, I do. It's a very nice technique if it's done
because that's
well.
how it works.
Yeah, and that's, I think it's true. If we could assemble a group of people who've all got a shared memory and then ask everybody to tell their version of it, it might be different. Well, it would be
definitely
different.
will.
It would be different.
And it's not just about one being the bad guy. The way you said it was almost giving like gaslighting, which obviously, that's something I just want to point out, that there is a line. Like, obviously you can argue with certain people, no, it happened this way, no, it happened this way. But then there is the moment when it actually becomes very toxic, very unhealthy.
Obviously, I am not a scientist or psychologist or doctor or memoryist or anything. But what I understand is that basically every memory we have is in here somewhere. And it's just a question of how you can access it. Some people would say that if you go, for example, to a hypnotist can dig into your brain and pull it out. And we've talked about also a famous English television program called Sherlock, and there was examples there of how Sherlock Holmes, the celebrated fictional detective, dealt with his memories. And I know you're a big fan, so you should tell us about that and what you think about that.
Don't even get me started. Oh,
well, I just
my gosh.
did.
And you made a mistake, because now sit down and I will have a TED talk about BBC Sherlock and Benedict Cumberbatch. Thank you very much. No, I'm kidding, but I'm a huge fan of the BBC Sherlock. Of Sherlock Holmes in general. I read some of the original books from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and I just love it. And funnily enough, I have this story connected to me watching Sherlock, because it just worked so perfectly for me back then. I became absolutely obsessed with the TV show in my last year of high school. And then, I had my final exams, and we were preparing for these exams, and it was like, really, really hard year when it comes to learning. And I was always a good student, but as we already know, I have a memory of a goldfish. Like, literally, it's just, I don't know what's wrong with me. It's probably running in my family, because we all have that, and we don't remember shit in my family. So that's why we rarely argue, because we just don't remember it. But I remember trying to study from a very hard test, and it was more technical test, and there were some words that just, because what I'm always doing, and it always worked for me, especially in high school, I'm not one to remember years or terms. I'm one to understand the topic and just yap about it, basically, which, sometimes works, but sometimes you have to remember years or terms or so on. And there was this, it was almost like psychological, and I loved that topic. And it was funnily enough, it was about how we remember things and how we see things. And there was this word that just made no sense. It was some scientific term, and I just couldn't remember it for the love of God. And then I remembered the technique used in Sherlock called the mind palace. Changed my life. And I want to explain it, because I get that no one, not everyone is such a huge fan of that as I am. So I want to explain it, because it's not just fictional. It was used in the Sherlock universe, but it actually existed like long before. It has really some scientific background, which I don't want to get into right now. But long story short, the whole point of it is that you imagine certain house or room in your head, and it works the best with spaces you are very familiar with. So let's say I will imagine my room, and it's basically based on the theory that when you visit someone or when you just come somewhere and you put your jacket on a chair, and then 4 hours later you remember that your jacket was on that chair. Like, it's a fact, it's easy to remember. So why can't we do it with like other information? So basically the whole process is that you imagine this space, this room, and you take the information you need to remember, the word, the number, anything, and you imagine it, placing it somewhere in the room. Like, I have this number I have to remember, and I will put it on the chair. And then when you need to recall that information when you are taking the test, you go back to that room and you should remember it because it's on that chair, almost physically, quotes, if I say it like that. It sounds insane, but it's quite a famous learning technique, and it really works. And going back to my story with me studying for the test, I remember being just so frustrated because I couldn't, for the love of God, I couldn't remember that word. And I remember almost being like, closing my eyes, imagining this room that I had, almost like, it's just my brain. My brain is a room. And because I was so angry I couldn't remember it, I took a Sharpie and I wrote the word on a mirror in that room in these angry black letters. And I was like, that's just it. I will either remember what I want, fuck it. And like the next day, a couple of days later, I was taking the test and it was asking for that word. And I just sort of remember closing my eyes, coming back to, that room, and the word was written on the mirror. It was literally there. It was
Wow.
almost felt like cheating because I just saw the word written on that mirror. And my best friend, my high school best friend, she was also a huge Sherlock fan. We were watching it together. We were always like Sherlock and Dr. Watson. I love that. And I was telling her that. She was like, that's so cool. And then she tried it again. It worked for her as well, blah, blah, blah. But I remember after I took that test, I was like, okay, I don't need that word anymore. And I erased it. I literally erased it from the mirror. And because I was studying for another test and I needed to remember some year when someone was born, I don't know, I wrote the year on the mirror instead. And the next day I came back to school and my friend asked me, hey, I just want to see, do you still remember that word? And I was like, no, I erased it. It's not there anymore. Now it's year 857. I don't know. And she was like, you're joking. You seriously don't remember? I was like, no, I don't remember because it's not there anymore. And I just think it's genius. It might feel crazy. Again, I think we already were talking about it once, that if someone's listening who is more like kind of technical person and not really creative, they probably think that we are absolutely insane. But I need you to support me as a creative person. I need you to support the theory and tell me it's not crazy, because I don't think it's crazy.
No, I don't think it's crazy at all. I'm very interested to hear the kind of the mechanics behind it, because I hadn't heard that before. I'd just seen it on Sherlock and thought, yeah, that's a brilliant dramatic device. And the way they did it in the TV program, where you had that kind of this virtual screens, and he was just swishing screens from the site. You can't really see what I'm doing here, but you know what I mean. When you're just taking a digital screen and swiping from one side to the other, I can sort of relate to it to a certain extent in the way that I learn stuff. As you know, I started out my working life as an actor, and I started acting when I was at school, and we would have school plays, and it was a big deal. And this is when I first learned this technique, and it basically is, I would call it, it's having a photographic memory for words. And I can remember with one play that I was doing, which was a Shakespeare play, and I had one of the main roles in it. So huge tranches of text that I had to learn. So I would have the page in front of me, and the other bizarre thing about this is I can remember where I did this. It was a corridor in school, and I would pace up and down the corridor. I always find that walking helps my thought process. I think probably just getting the blood flowing. So I would be pacing up and down, reading this book, looking at this text, and remembering the page. So when I came to deliver the lines and go to rehearsal and ultimately the performances, in my mind, I could see the page and I was just reading down the page. And so then I started doing that for exams with my school exams. And for instance, one of the subjects I did was history. This is when, for in England, what we call A levels, advanced level, and you just choose 3 subjects that you specialize in some depth. And so one of mine was history. So a lot of information to learn. And the lessons were basically a long lecture from the teacher, and you were just writing notes about it. And as I wrote down the notes, I used to draw these pictures, these little profile pictures of different faces. And artistically, I have to hold my hands up and say they were awful, but they were placeholders in my memory. And then when I came to do the exam, I could remember, okay, this bit of information is where I had a picture of that guy with a strange pointy beard. And then I could see my handwriting. I had to make sure my handwriting was good enough to be able to read it again in my brain. So honestly, I just literally, when it comes to words, I can just always remember them because I can see them. So long as I've seen it written up. For example, ever since a very young age, from being at school, I've always been able to spell perfectly so long as I've seen the word. If I haven't seen it, then that's when I'll make a mistake. So that's kind of my memory technique. You know, and some people again would say it's cheating because maybe my understanding of the topic in some instances, not always, isn't very good.
As you were talking about it, and obviously I know that because we were talking about it, I know that that's how it works in your mind, basically. But I don't know, for some reason, hearing it now, I'm just like, that's crazy. Man, you are absolutely crazy. But who am I to judge? Because I have literally the same thing. Like, I just remember, the color that the topic was written in, or, just on what page it was. I have the same. And I always thought that it was normal, growing up at school and you are learning and you are making notes and so on and so on. I just thought that everybody had it like that. And I only found out that that's not true during my finals in high school when I was talking to my friends and I was telling them how I was studying and they were like, that doesn't work. Like, I can't do that because it doesn't work for me. And I just find it fascinating. Like, maybe for someone the mind palace technique doesn't work. For me, it certainly does. So if you want to try it, let me know. Because if it does work, it's just genius. It's like, it feels like you are cheating the system because you're like, oh, I don't remember. Let me go back to this room because it's written there. Easy business.
Let's move on to a different aspect of memory, the sensual aspect, how your senses can trigger memories. Particularly, I want to just focus on music because music has a particular way of working with the brain, which I'm certainly not going to go into because I'm not an expert on that. But as you know, I do play musical instruments and spent many years playing in bands. But more importantly, I spent most of my career working in music with music radio, music TV, that sort of thing. So I'm fascinated by music and I know a lot of songs and a lot of music. And you can listen to a song that maybe you haven't heard for ages, and it will just take you back to a specific event, specific place. You might remember the first time you heard it, or you might remember what you were doing on one of the occasions you heard the song.
Speaking of memories and music and so on, there's this one story that I almost forced you to tell today. So don't think I forgot about it because, oh my gosh, you have many stories. I've heard thousands of your stories at this point. This is still probably my favorite or one of the favorite ones, and it's connected to music, and because we are here talking about music, I need you to tell the story. I'm sat, I'm listening. Go on.
Music and memory. Well, I always say I have a story for every occasion, and they are all true. This goes back to all of my work that I've done over the years, largely with the BBC, making programs about music. And one time, many years ago, 1992 to be precise, I was working for BBC World Service, and I'd got them to agree to me making a series of programs about music and the West Coast of America. We called it the West Coast Sound, and there is a very specific sound, which basically meant me going and living in Los Angeles mostly for a few weeks, and then in San Francisco also for a few weeks, but longer in Los Angeles. And mainly the idea was to meet with and interview American performers of the West Coast Sound, basically American rock stars. But there are some English people who also live and work out there. One of these was Ozzy Osbourne, well-known English rock singer, sadly died towards the end of last year. And he was living at that time in Los Angeles. So, and I found out about this. And so I thought, well, it would be interesting to get the English perspective on this, on the West Coast Sound. So I arranged an interview and went to meet him. So when I went there one Thursday afternoon, I believe it was, and there was just Ozzy and Sharon, and we met, and then Ozzy's full of energy, and he comes from a city in England called Birmingham, and they have a very specific way of talking, which I shall try to replicate, but probably not very successful.
I love Birmingham people. Seriously, my favorite English people, because the accent is just so great.
It can be quite entertaining. It's true. So he was so hospitable. It was great, Nick. Great to see you. So what can we talk about? And then Sharon, Mrs. Osbourne, came in and provided us both with Coke, a cola.
Okay.
Because
never mind,
Ozzy,
keep going.
No, really. We sat
I
there
trust you. I'm sure your memory is correct. I trust you.
It really was. Actually, no, I think it was actually Pepsi Cola, if I be
right.
Absolutely accurate, but I'm pretty sure it was. And we sat on a sofa, and, I had all my questions ready, and I just sort of started him off. And then I didn't need to really participate anymore because he just took it away. And one of the first things we addressed was the fact that we were drinking Pepsi Cola. And said, this is all I can drink these days, Nick. And it's so fucking boring. You'll have to forgive the language, but that's how Ozzy spoke. He said, I'm not allowed to drink anymore. And if Sharon catches me drinking, I'll be in such trouble. But I'd got in such trouble before. We'll be doing gigs. You go out and do a gig, and then after the gig, we have a few drinks and we go somewhere. And then the next morning, I wake up and there's somebody lying beside me. I don't know who it is, and I don't know what's happened. I don't know what I've done. And so on and so forth. He was just telling me all these stories. I'll tell you one extraordinary story that he told me. I don't travel much because I don't like going through the customs because everybody knows you. And so you're trying to go through customs and an airport and everybody wants to talk to you, which is nice. But you try signing all those autographs. It gets a bit boring after a while. So you tend to go somewhere where you're not going to see any people. One of the best holidays I had, and he told me this story, absolutely true. And I used to I still try to imagine it. It's so bizarre. So I went on a holiday on Neil Young's yacht. Now, I would never, Neil Young, Canadian rock star, I would never have put Neil Young and Ozzy Osbourne in the same room, but It gets better. So I was there with Neil and his family and Elton John. What?
You
Ozzy
never
Osbourne,
told me this part of the
Neil
story.
Young, and
Are you
Elton
kidding
John.
me?
No, not at all.
It starts like one of these jokes, like a German person, a Czech person, and an English person goes into a pub. Let's see the punchline. Why did you never tell me this part of the story? Oh my gosh, now I love it even more.
I can't remember why I never have done. But anyway, so, I mean, we spoke he spoke pretty much for 3 hours non-stop. But, and it was fantastic. And of course, the thing is, I had it all on tape.
Wish you had that tape. Like the amount of money I would pay, I would sell my soul to hear this tape. For two reasons. First, imagining you having a conversation, maybe one-sided conversation, but, still a conversation with Ozzy Osbourne, knowing obviously, like, having a celebrity, knowing a celebrity, but knowing you as well would just be absolutely hilarious. I would love that. I would also kind of love to hear you, like, how long ago that was? Like, I don't know, 30 years ago?
1992, so quite a long time.
I can't do the math. But like hearing that version of you, I would absolutely love that, and I would definitely make fun of you. But the second thing, and that's why I wanted you to tell this story in this episode, is that there are 3 versions of this story. This is yours. There is Ozzy's version. I mean, unfortunately, he can't tell us anymore. And there is the real version, what actually happened, word to word, on that tape. And I seriously would love to hear the tape and have you hear the tape and see like how right you are, how correctly you remember this whole situation. That would be so interesting.
This is one of the reasons that the memory is slightly more crystallized, because obviously when I got back to England, I had hours and hours of tape of interviews with so many people, then listening through to all these tapes over and over. So of course, a lot of these phrases get fixed in your mind. I mean, I can remember Ozzy so often when he was talking about not drinking and not drugging, and he just kept saying, excuse the language, folks, it's just so fucking boring, Nick, but I've got to do it. The thing is, I listen to those tapes so often, and I can remember, being in that room, and because of the nature of doing an interview where you've got to hold a microphone right in their face, basically. So we were really close together. I can really just remember that. I can remember the feel of his thigh on mine because we were sat right next to each other.
Good for you, man.
Not in the way that you're starting to think, and I know where your mind goes. And then, of course, there was Sharon. Sharon, while we were doing the interview, after she gave us the Pepsi Colas, so Sharon then went into the next room, and then she came back at the end, and she took a photograph, which I think we can show you, of me and Ozzy. And also, I'll put a link to my website on the description. You may have seen it on the description when you came to this podcast. If you click on it, it takes you to my website, and there's me and Ozzy and just a little bit of the story that I've just told you, basically.
Love it.
While you're looking at the description and looking for that link, please drop us a like and subscribe, because that will really help us on our podcast on Life Happens. And we're really pleased to have you here. And by the way, have you met a celebrity? Because if so, tell us about it. It would be fascinating. We can retell the story here if you like. But yeah, so that basically, to wrap that up, that's my Ozzy Osbourne story.
Love it. And for those, I mean, obviously you can check out the link and the website. And for those watching with video, we will put the picture in the video somewhere around this time during editing for you to see it, because I have it somewhere. I'm so sure I have it, so I will use it and we will put it there. Because yeah. Also, how old are you at that picture? You'll see young version of Nick.
I don't know, somewhere in my 30s.
I'm definitely not just cropping it and putting just Ozzy there. I'm putting the whole thing there. So, we get you in your younger version, because I found that very, I'm looking for a word, interesting as well when I saw that picture. Anyway, no, this is perfect story. I really love it. I'm so happy you said it here. I have some other stories that I remember you telling me that I want to force you to say in this podcast, but baby steps, we are working on it. But this was one of them, and love it.
I see. Okay.
So I think that even with this story, we have enough proof that memory evolves. We are the authors of the memories, sometimes subconsciously, sometimes consciously. And, trust your memory. I mean, you don't have to doubt everything you remember. You don't have to doubt every memory. But maybe sometimes try to think about how much you change things in your life.
And I would just add to that, before we go, the most important thing is make memories, do stuff, get out there and be part of life and have fun. It's important to have good memories. They kind of sustain
it's important to have something to forget. That's how I would say it.
And on that note, I think we can say goodbye. So don't forget, join Life Happens for the next episode, and we'll see you then.